Today's Gemara in Yoma Daf Ayin Dalit. Although learning Shvias Chus for Shem of Ben Ben Vega Chaim Mesar Shalom Sim Reitz Sar Bas Knendel Ita Basiem Bas Chayse Yisrael Mendel is the person Israel Shem Mas Nami Veshavig Shechan Shmol Ben Dil Nun Chan Rizim Chaim Mas Bina Li Rachas of Musa Din Ida Bashin Mendel Svi Ben Vega Vern Michal Yisrael Nasel Huva Rivka Bas Sheva Naftali Siv Michal Esther Besay Shachali Yisrael as well as the Shidduch for Yisrael Chaim and Devaira and Ataliyah Bas Ita. We move forward into this 8th parak, the final parak of Masechtas Yoma, dealing with the actual Yom Kippur, dealing with the Isurim of Yom Kippur, the eating, the drinking, the anointing, the Tasha Shamita, etc., 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 which we're going to get involved in heavily today. Yesterday we began the parak, we began the Gemara, and in the Gemara we began with a fundamental question that the Mishnah said that Yom Kippurim is Aser Ba'achilu Ushtiya. It's Aser, forbidden, and the Gemara wanted to know, why is it Aser? It should have said it's Chayiv, it's an Isser Karis. So the Gemara said, what's the answer? We're talking about a case of Chatzi Shir, that you only Chayiv, you're only obligated when you eat the full amount. What if you eat half the amount? The Gemara says, grape, that's only if you hold according to the Mandamar Chatzi Shir. Also minat Torah. But if your Chatzi Shir is mutter minat Torah, what are you going to say? Which we said, the Itmar, we quoted the famous Machlekes, Rav Yochanan, Reish Lakish, whether Chatzi Shir, whether you eat the half of the amount, is that an Issa D'Oraisa or is that an Issa D'Rabbanan? Some very, very famous Gemaras today. So it says the Gemara, Rav Yochanan said it's also minat Torah, Reish Lakish says it's mutter minat Torah. So the Gemara said, on Ichla Rav Yochanan, the Reish Lakish, Michael Meimar, and we concluded with the famous words of Moide Reish Lakish Asr Midrabanan. It's true, Reish Lakish holds that Chatzi Shir is mutter minat Torah, but minat Torah it's mutter. Midrabanan it's still an Issa D'Rabbanan, and that's the reason why it says the Mishnah Yom Kippurim Aser B'achilu Ushtiya, etc. Says the Gemara on that point, 5 lines on the bottom. Ayin Gimel and Beis, excuse me. Iachi lo nechayev le'karban shvua. According to Reish Lakish, if there's an Issa D'Rabbanan, you should not be chayiv a karban shvua if you eat Chatzi Shir, half of the shir, which we'll explain as we go along right now. Alama Tanan, why do we learn in a Mishnah as follows? 4 lines on the bottom and Gimel and Beis. Shvua shlei eichel v'eichel nevelus utreifas shkatzim ramasim. Someone makes a shvua that he's not going to eat, and then he goes and he eats foods which are forbidden to him, nevelus treifas on shechted animals, Shkatzim, creepy crawler creatures, etc. What is halacha? Says the Mishnah, Chayiv, you're over an Isser D'Oraisa. Rav Shimon, Poiter. Rav Shimon says, no, there is no Isser D'Oraisa. Again, if there's an Isser D'Oraisa, that means you have to bring a karban shvua, because you made a shvua, you're not going to eat, and you ate. You're over an Isser D'Oraisa. According to Rav Shimon, you're Potter. Vavinam ba, and again, I know that there's a lot of unclarity right now, but as we go along, we're going to explain what's going on. What is this din of karban shvua? Where does it apply? What's going on? Says the Gemara, 3 lines from the bottom. Va'avinam ba, we pondered. Amai chayiv. Why, according to the Tanakama, are you chayiv? So everyone here is wondering, well, why are you not chayiv? You made a shvua, you made an oath not to do something, and you did it. You're over your oath, and the halacha is when you transgress, you're swearing. What do? You bring a karban. So what's the question? So the Gemara explains, you know why? Mushva v'aymid mar sinaihu, because you already was under oath. All of Klal Yisrael swore at our Sinai, we're going to follow the Torah. And then there's a klal. The klal is that once there's an oath, once there's a shvua, another oath cannot be chal, cannot fall and not be act upon it. So if we already were under oath, by making a new oath, it doesn't do anything. So it's true, you're going to be over an Isser D'Oraisa from the fact that you ate, and the Torah says not to eat. But are you over a shvua? Are you transgressing that which you said you will not do? Says the Gemara, it should not be. Why? Because you're mushba ba'aymed the Har Sinai. And that's the reason why I asked the Gemara, why you chayiv a shvua? You should not be chayiv a karban shvua. So the Gemara explains, Ravu Shmuel Rav Yochanan, they explain the Amri bekoilel dvarim mutarim and dvarim asurim. The case is that you included when you said, I'm not going to eat. You said I'm not going to eat anything. The Torah obviously allows you to eat. Then you went and you ate forbidden foods. What were you mushva vaymin bar Sinai, and what were you not allowed to eat from the time of our Sinai? Only forbidden foods. If you're a koilel, if you included within it permissible foods, then what you effectively did is you found a place for your shvua to bichal. The shvua will work because since there's a part of the shvua that works, the whole shvua will work. So says the Gemara, that's the reason why you're going to be chayiv. V'reish Lakish Amar, and of course, is the point that we have to hone in on, because this whole question came to ask on Reish Lakish, who says Chatzi Shir is mutter min ha'Torah, asa midrabanan. But Reish Lakish over there, with regard to Karban Shvuah, said Iyata Moitzi Ella. The only case that we could discuss, the only time that you're going to be chayiv a Karban Shvuah for eating forbidden foods is b'mefarish Chatzi Shir va'aliba derabanan. Either where you specified your shvuah was, I'm not going to eat a chatzi shir, I'm not going to eat half the amount. Oy bistam valiba, turning over to Amid Aleph, valiba d'Ravi Akiva. Or in a stam case, aliba d'Ravi Akiva, the Amar Adam Eiser Atzmai b'chol shu, a person could forbid upon himself a kol shu. So what do we see over here? And this is the question on Reish Lakish. Says the Gemara, now the Gemara is going to articulate exactly what's bothering it. I'm sorry, but the Gemara is not going to articulate. The question is that according to Reish Lakish, what do we see? Reish Lakish explains that if he holds Chatzi Shir is mutter min ha'Torah and it's aser d'Rabbanan, then it's not going to work. Why is it not going to work? Because that means it's aser midrabanan. Again, what was the whole issue over here? The issue over here was your mushba v'oimid mehar Sinai. And once on Har Sinai there was a swearing, an oath, a new oath cannot fall upon it, and therefore there'll be no Karban Shvuah. So that's the Aleph base. There's only Karban Shvuah if there's a new oath. One makes an oath and transgresses his oath, transgressing his Shvuah. What if one makes an oath upon something he already was chayiv upon, about something that says in the Torah? The Shvuah is not chal. There is no Karban Shvuah. So what's the case over here? Where their shvuah is yes chal, is yes Karban Shvuah. Said Reish Lakish, the case is when you made a shvuah to eat a half a kazayis. Now let's go into this. According to Reish Lakish, what is the status of eating a half a kazayis? Chatzi shir mutter min ha'Torah. Great. So Chatzi shir mutter min ha'Torah. So everything should be good. Which means I was not mushba v'aymin Har Sinai. There was no oath upon me from Har Sinai. Very good. But what did Reish Lakish just tell us a moment ago? But it's aser d'Rabbanan. And if it's aser d'Rabbanan, says Rashi very famously. Rashi is over here in Amud Aleph, about 5 lines into the narrow lines. Rashi explains linyan karban v'svirle the Reish Lakish the Chatzi Shir aser midrabanan heichi muki la lahadetani chayiv ba'oichel Chatzi Shir. How could the case be that you're chayiv a Karban Shvuah when you ate a Chatzi Shir? It's aser derabanan. So everyone here is wondering, right? It's only aser derabanan. It's not aser deoraisa. So your Shvuah makes it aser deoraisa. Says Rashi the famous words Vari af olah mushba. Even on Dirabanans we're mushba from Har Sinai. Why? Misham lav delois aser. Because it's an Issa Daraisa. The Torah says you must follow the Rabbanan. So according to Reish Lakish, Chatzi Shir is mutter min ha'Torah. Aser d'Rabbanan, Iser d'Rabbanan is as well an element of Daraisa. How could Reish Lakish explain the case by Karban Shvuah, that the case is that you made a Shvuah that you're not going to eat even a Chatzi Shir? That's as well Mushva Har Sinai from the lav of Loi Sa Sur. Which, of course, just before we continue, this is a tremendous machlekes, whether every D'Rabbanan carries with it this element of D'Araisa, of Loisasur. Therefore, every D'Rabbanan at some level has a din D'Araisa. Big machlekes, Rambam exactly how to learn this. And this Hava Min Alis of the Gemara is a big mar makaim for this discussion. Says the Gemara, V'chi Tema, 2 lines down. If you're going to tell me on a D'Oraisa level, there's a heter min ha'Torah. On a D'Oraisa level, you're allowed to eat this food, as Rashi, the next Rashi speaks out, Ein zeh mushba mihar Sinai. There is a place for the shvuah to be chal, because it's not really also daraisa. But we learned in a Mishnah, shvuah eidos ain't on a heges el beruhin la'ayid. Shvuah is eidos. If someone makes a shvuah about testimony, he's only obligated in cases where he could have testified. Which means what says the Gemara of Avinamba? And we pondered and we wondered. What does that mean? It comes to be only a shvuah that you could have testified. And Rabba Amar lemutei that each one says that there are unique cases where you're not fit to testify. A king, it's beneath his dignity to testify. One who's a gambler, it's not appropriate for him to testify. And says the Gemara, Misachik Ba'Kovya Midaraisa. Misachik Ba'Kovya is someone who gambles on a Daraisa level. He's able to bring, he's able to testify. And the Rabbanan who the one that made apostle. So if it's only a din the Rabbanan making apostle, you would think great. So there's a place for the Shvua to be chal, and yet we see in this mission of Lo Kal Chai Li Alei Shvua, we see the Shvua is not chal. So what do we see? We see that it must be with regard to Shvuos, with regard to making swearings, when you'll be chayav a carbon Shvua, even a din de Rabbanan is like a din de Araisa. So says the Gemara, what is the answer for Reish Lakish? According to Reish Lakish, if Chatzi Shir is mutter min ha'Torah and asa d'Rabbanan, he would never be chayiv a carbon shvua for a Chatzi Shir, and yet that is precisely the case that Reish Lakish said you are chayiv a carbon shvua. Says the Gemara, Shani Asam, this do not answer carbon shvua damar akra im lo yagid v'hai lav bar hagaduhu. This is a different case, a special Xavier Zaykasov. The Torah says im lo yagid, if you don't testify, and this person is not within a person capable of testifying, and that's the reason why the carbon shvua does not apply to him, but it's not necessarily going to factor in to our equation when it comes to one who is fit or not fit for a shvua. But now, back to our original question, what about a person, the Chatzi Shir question? Anytime it says Einish Kares, Lo Itani Aser. Now, we're going back to the whole Gemara. We started yesterday and we said it over today. Our Mishnah says that on Yom Kippur you're aser to do what? Achila shtiyah. Etc. And we wonder why aser, it's chayiv karis, it's just a chayiv. Says the Gemara, is that true? Is the word aser inappropriate? The wrong word for karis vatanya? What do you mean? But we learned in a braysa, even though we said they're all aser, like amru einish karis, the karis is only going on eating, drinking, and doing malacha on Yom Kippur. So says the Gemara, and the reason why it says aser is because it's going on everything. So what's your problem? So the Gemara now goes and tries to explain what's bothering us. When does it say aser is only referring to Chatzi Shir? Avol b'shir, but once you ate, once you were over the prescribed amount, einish karis. That's the only time there's going to be einish karis. What do we see from this braysa? That the word aser is not used with regard to achila ushtia, eating and drinking. Why? Because there's kares, and therefore that was our original question. Our original question was achila and shtia, since they're in the parsha of something giving you kares. Of course, when you have the requisite amount, it should use the word chayiv and it should not use the word kares. And now our original question of the Gemara was a justified question. And our original terutzim stand machlokes Rav Yochanan, Reish Lakish, etc. Another way to explain, again, we're now explaining, the Gemara is a little bit out of order, it makes it a bit complicated. We're explaining the original question when the Gemara began. Kikatani Aser, when the Mishnah says Aser Ash'aira, which is the more obvious teretz, I'm sure everyone was wondering this one, it's going by everything else, because like we just explained, kares is only by Achila and Shtia and Malacha, but the rest of the Mishnah, anointing and wearing leather shoes and having marital relations, those are not Einish Kares. So the word Aser is going on those. Titana Rabba Rav Yosef B'Shar Sifrei Devei Rav, they learned in the Sifrei Devei Rav in Ayin Yom Kippurim, Sha'aser B'Rachis Avzich V'Nilas Hasandal, it's Aser, not Kares, it's Aser B'Tashamit, Tamalem Shabbat, Shabbasoin, and therefore that's why our Mishnah uses the word Aser, because it's going on all the cases in the Mishnah. Says the Gemara, we're at the two dots, about 12 lines from the bottom, Ayin Dalid, Amid Aleph. Gufa. Let's go a little bit deeper into our famous machlokes of Chatzi Shir Aser min HaTorah, or not, machlokes Reish Lakish and Rav Yochanan. Gufa, says the Gemara, Chatzi Shir Rav Yochanan Amar Aser min HaTorah, Reish Lakish Amar Mutter min HaTorah. Rav Yochanan Amar Aser min HaTorah, why? Kivan de Chazi litztarufe isura ka'achol. What's the reason why Chatzi Shir? Again, let's get the simple case. In Yom Kippur, we already spoke out. What are you chayiv for eating or kikseves agasa, a date amount? What are you chayiv for drinking on mali lugmaf? So now the question is, if I drink half of that, am I chayiv? Says Rav Yochanan, yes. Is there da'araisa for eating half of that amount? Well, let's say nevela. Let's say someone eats a treif and eats a chatzi kezayis. Is he over da'araisa? Rav Yochanan says yes. What's the reason? So the Gemara now explains the fundamental machlokes is that Rav Yochanan says chazi litztarufe. Says you can eat another half a kezayis, you can eat another half a shear, and then it would combine. So therefore, yisur ka'achal, each act of eating is considered an act of biblical da'araisa eating. Isser da'araisa. Rish Lakish Amar Mutter min HaTorah. Why? Achila Amar Rachmana. The concept that we had back in Gemara Psachim, that what is called an achila when you eat a kezayis, veleka when you don't eat a kezayis, it's not called an achila. Din of Rish Lakish, the fundamental machlekes, of course, is much that could be said on this machlekes, but on the very fundamental and basic level. Rav Yochanan says when you eat half, since you could eat a full, even the half is considered biblically forbidden. Rish Lakish says no, until you eat a full quantity, it's not called eating at all. The Torah says achila, and you didn't do an achila, so it's not asa deraisa. Hey, say Rav Yochanan, the Rish Lakish. Rav Yochanan says asa min deraisa. Ask Rish Lakish, ainli elakil sheyesh nebainis. He quotes a brisa, and the brisa with regard to eating forbidden foods, chaylev, the forbidden fast, etc. The brisa says, what do I see? Only when you eat the chaylev, the forbidden fats that are included in kares, it's also included in the iser. Kai, when it comes to a kai, which is a suffix behema, suffix chai, an animal which we're not sure its status. V'chatzi shir, the crucial words. Hayel ve'enoi ba'oinesh, yachal eino ba'azara. The hava mina says this price says maybe it's not a daraisa. Tamalaymar kol chaylev. Says the Gemara, says Rav Yochanan, I have an explicit brisa that says there's a pasuk kol chaylev telling me it's a deraisa on how much, even chatzi shir. So Rish Lakish, how can you tell me chatzi shir mutar min HaTorah? Answers Rish Lakish 4 lines for the bottom of Drabanan. No, it's only this Drabanan. Vikra smachta ba'alma, just an smachta, which of course is always difficult. What exactly is the discussion? But that is Rish Lakish's answer. And explains the Gemara, and indeed, this is logical. If you're going to tell me that when the pasuk says kol chaylev, it's a real din daraisa. Kai. What was a kai? We explained. There's an animal. We're not sure it's a behema or a chaya. Sveikahu. It's your kralas. Sveika. Would you need a pasuk to include that this suffix animal is included in iser? It's pashit. It's a suffix daraisa. Of course, it's included in iser. So if the truth is that the pasuk is just an asmachta, it's much better because by the case of the kai, it would make a lot of sense. Of course, we know it's aser. The pasuk is just an asmachta. Says the Gemara, no raya from the case of kai. Mishamalo Airi. That would not be a raya. Why? Because Savri. Moving on to Ayin Dalet Amid Beis, Koi Beria Bifnei Atzma. An interesting concept is Koi, this animal, Savichai, Savik Behema, is not a suffix, it's a creation of suffix. It's inherently unclear what it is, and therefore we would not necessarily see the rules of suffix daraisa on it because it's an inherent suffix, and that's the reason why we need a pasuk coming to include it. And therefore, there's no raya to Rish Lakish's answer. Rish Lakish still has a beautiful answer, cross machta ba'alma, but we don't have a raya to it. Says the Gemara, dilei tema achi. If you're not going to say this, Adam Rav Idi Baravid, av kol elasuye kol. The pasuk kol comes to include a kai. Kai sveiku. It's krawler bui sveiku. The same question. Elaberia shiny hachanami beria elaberia shiny hachanami beria shiny. So we see it's not necessarily a raya to Rish Lakish's answer, and that is the fundamental machlokes of Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish. Rav Yochanan says a pasuk of kol din daraisa ini chatzi shir. Rish Lakish says no mutter daraisa. Why? Because the pasuk of kol is just an esmachta be alma. Tanu rabbanon. Let's get involved in the other afflictions of Yom Kippur. Says in the Torah, te'anu es nafshay sichem. You should afflict yourself. Yoch, I would have thought yeshiv achamoy b'tzina. It says afflict yourself. So you know what? Go out of the boiling sun. Go sit in a freezer. Kidei sheyitztayer, in order to put yourself in pain. Tamalaymer, no. V'chol melacha lo yisasu. Ma melacha sheval taseh. What does it mean? Don't do melacha. You don't actually have to do anything. It means just don't do melacha. Af inoi nefesh sheval Just sit and don't do anything. Says the Gemara, okay, maybe you don't have to go out into the sun, but what if you're sitting in the sun and it gets hot? Maybe you should not get up and go sit in the shade. Yosef Vitula, you're sitting in the cold and it gets cold for you. Maybe go sit in the sun. So meaning the question now is true. Maybe you don't have to proactively go put yourself in pain, but if you're in a situation of pain, are you allowed to lessen the pain? Are you allowed to go out of the sun, go into the air-conditioned room? Says the Gemara, yes again. We don't find such differentiations. Just like by Malach, you're just not allowed to do it. So too by Ino, you're afflicting yourself, it's going to be the same thing, and you do not have to proactively or even allow yourself to continuously be passively in pain. Tanya Idach, another price about afflicting yourself in Yom Kippur. Tanu as it says in the Torah you should afflict yourself. You would think sit in the sun or the cold and put yourself in pain. A different source. Just like malacha, you're chayiv upon it in another place. So too, when it comes to afflicting yourself, then you're chayiv upon it in another place. What does that mean? What does that refer to? Something you're chayiv on it elsewhere. Pigel v'naiser. This is forbidden karbanos, leaving karbanos over the bad machshavos. You're not allowed to eat those in Yom Kippur. Avi pigel v'naiser shem bekaris. Says Gemara, great. So maybe in Yom Kippur you can't eat pigel v'naiser because that's an issur darais of karis. But maybe v'loy avir sa tevel sheina bekaris. Maybe you're allowed to eat tevel because there's no din karis, there's no issur karis on it. Tamlemer te'anu. Says Te'anu. Riba comes to include you can't even eat Tevel. Ovi Tevel Shuba Misa. Says Gemara, great. So I'll say you can't eat Tevel because it's a Chi of Misa. But Nevela is not Misa. Tamlemer Te'anu. Riba. The Torah says it another time. But maybe Chulin, which is not a lav, would not be included. Again, the Torah says Tanu riba of you can't get up and eat it. We're not going to include chuma that you have to get up and there's a mitzvah to eat it. Again, the Torah spells that again. That you can't leave over chuma. Tamalaimer Tanu Vinis Nafsha Secham Riba. Vem Nafsha Laimer, Hareu Oimer, Vavartis and Nefesh, He Inoishu Avidas and Nefesh. Vezeze, Zachilo Shtia. What is an Inui? What is an affliction that could cause you to perish, to die? Is eating and drinking. And therefore that's the final makar for the moment. So the Torah said 6 different times. Do not I'm sorry, the Torah said 5 times 3 times in Vayikra, 1 time is Van Midbar. There's a 6th time when the Torah says this last pasuk that we just concluded, it says the Gemara is in a 6th pasuk when the Torah said and therefore that's going to come to tell you each and every level we're adding upon adding. We would first thought only things karis, only things chulin, only things issur Torah, only things nicer, only things positive. The final blow that we just concluded is maybe you'll say everything we said is wrong. We just said 5 different times the Torah said maybe they're all wrong, and maybe what the Torah means. So says the Gemara, we have another pasuk. I will destroy, make lost the soul, and that teaches me you're not allowed to eat and drink. So the build-up was a little bit interesting. We had a bunch of different stages, maybe this, maybe this, maybe this, maybe this, maybe this, maybe this. Then the Gemara says, but maybe that's all wrong. So okay, I have a different pasuk telling me you can't eat and drink. So says the Gemara, the first white line, and we're going to conclude with this. What was wrong that you brought another pasuk? What was the reason for you to say, and if that's all wrong, okay, I have a new pasuk. What was the reason it's all wrong? So explains the Gemara. We had a havamina. Then maybe every single time the Torah said to anu, afflict yourself, it's referring to arayis, don't have relations. There's another pasuk that says vavarati anafesh, which is inoi sheish ba'avodas nafesh. What's an inoi that can cause you to lose your soul is not the lack of marital relations, but rather the lack of food. And that's going to be achila shtiya. And that's going to be the final makar that you cannot eat and drink in Yom Kippur. We'll pick it up from Tani Rabbi Yishmael tomorrow. More makaris forbidding where we know that you're not allowed to eat and drink